Hello! If anyone has noticed, I doubt many people have, but just in case you have noticed, my upload schedule has gone to pot of late. As in, there hasn't been any uploads of late. This is because I decided to take a break for my own well-being. I was getting surprisingly stressed to the point that I was noticing it in all aspects of my life. I mean, to be fair, it was down to my life, everything from work and family and just living in general. Money, holy crap, money. But it wasn't exactly helped by other things, such as getting into spats on Twitter with people who I thought had a brain and a backbone, but apparently didn't. Plus, there was so much going on, like a surprising amount of negative videos were coming out at the time. And I was having so many ideas of videos I wanted to make, but had so little time to actually get them down, put them into something. All these things and more were just building up and building up. It's interesting to find out just how much stress you're under when you break, or what ends up breaking you. And in this case, it was 2 or 3 things, I'm not entirely sure how many exactly. One of them was definitely someone buying a couple of necklaces from my Etsy store, and suddenly I realised I had to fit them in somewhere. I had to find time to clean a couple of those up and get them all posted out and whatnot, in amongst everything else. Another was a comment left on one of my videos, one of my older videos, and I started reading it, found it to be quite negative, and then thought to myself, I am not in the mental place to deal with this. I am not in a condition to be reading this and coming up with an answer for this. A third one has something to do with something else, so we'll leave that for a second. But yeah, when I realised just how under pressure I was, I realised I needed to stop. I needed to find some time to not do anything. And that old saying really does have value. You know the one, goes something like, give me the wisdom to change what I can and deal with what I can't. Something along those lines, you know. That really does ring true when you need to stop, when you need to calm down, when you need to de-stress. Because there are things in my life I can't stop. Work, family, etc. Those things are going to happen regardless of what I do. Well, with work, I could stop that, but I need that, so that needs to keep going. But other stuff, like YouTubing, making videos, writing scripts, coming up with ideas, that's entirely within my power to stop, so I stopped it. And the best way to stop something when you need to stop it is just stop. Not winding down, not taking your time to do this, just stop. Complete dead stop, get off the tracks, park yourself and rest. And that's what I did. Hence why my last video was the Monarch Legacy of Monsters finale video, and then nothing else. Despite lots of other things coming out in the meantime, I just couldn't. I'm still actually kind of stressed. I do find that today, recording this video, I wanted to get this done earlier, but when I woke up, I just felt drained from the weeks, I should say. I still felt stressed, still felt tired, so I was almost going to put this off, but I thought, no, I'm going to do this, and then if I need to, I can have next week off. And that's where my head is at the minute. As much as I do want to make videos, as much as I have loads of ideas, which I'll go over soon, I don't want to overstress myself in trying to get them done. So in terms of a schedule, there won't be one. There's just going to be when I get round to it. I apologise to everybody who enjoys my content and looks forward to it, but that is going to have to be the way it's going to have to be, just so I can... Well, let me put it this way. I was watching an EFAP stream, one of the more recent ones, and they said something that made me want to look up one of my old videos, which turned out to be Glass Onion Shattered Themes. I put the video on just to look at something. And then I kept watching it. And kept watching it. And then I realised I'd actually just turned off EFAP to watch my own video. I was quite taken by my own work, and I really want to get back to that. I want to take my time with videos and make them as good as they can be, with the editing, with the artwork, etc. So yeah, schedule is going to be a lot less. But I might, I think, do videos like this more often. Just pure audio about things that have happened recently. That way I can get these sorts of things out. I can get them out of my head so I can concentrate on things that are a bit more worthwhile. Which then leads me on to the second subject of this video. Monarch LOM. Legacy of Monsters. You know, LOM. I prefer LOM. There's something more derogatory about the expulsion of the word LOM. Because honestly, that's how I kind of feel about this show. It doesn't really deserve the respect saying its full name would give it. The reason I'm so down on it is because I've had time to give it some thought, and that some thought has led me down cul-de-sacs of understanding. By which I mean, you start thinking about certain things, you're like, well, this doesn't make any sense, this is terrible, this is bad. And I was asked at one point, is Monarch LOM worse or better than Netflix's Skull Island series? And at the time I said, yeah, it's definitely better. Skull Island is just terrible. Monarch LOM at least is trying to do something. And to be fair, I still have that opinion. I think the Skull Island series on Netflix is so bad, it's almost like they took something else and sort of put a Monsterverse label on it. It's so removed from the rest of the series, from the rest of the Monsterverse. That's just how not with it is. But to an extent, because of that, you can just ignore it. It's almost inoffensive, it's so ignorable. But with Monarch Legacy of Monsters, there's so much of it that's entwined with the Monsterverse that you have to acknowledge it, you have to look at it. But then it comes down to how much time, effort and care am I going to put into it? Am I going to be putting into an analysis of Monarch LOM? And honestly, I don't want to put that much into it, because I don't think it deserves that much time put into it. Which is why I'm going to address it quickly here, just to point out some of the things I've thought about, which makes me really not want to go anywhere near it. So the first thing I wanted to point out was, despite all the character arcs going on, despite the stories, despite the universe building, the attempts at filling in the blanks in the history books of the Monsterverse, when it comes down to it, Monarch LOM is the story of Lee Shaw, which sounds odd considering we're supposed to be following Kate Randa most of the time. But honestly, if you follow it chronologically, it's the story of Lee Shaw. How Lee Shaw escorted Keiko Mura, wasn't it? Yeah, it was Keiko Mura. And then that led to them bumping into Bill Randa. And then how they started Monarch. And then how Monarch built up. Then what happened to Lee Shaw. Because that gap between him going into the hole and then coming out again, the only filling of that gap is Con Skull Island, which was done beforehand. So Monarch LOM is entirely following Lee Shaw's perspective as he goes into the hole, comes out again, sees what's happened. And then, when Kate and her brother and their mate find the information, where do they go? Lee Shaw. Monarch LOM is the story of Lee Shaw, right up to the... I was going to say the time he died. But I don't think he died. Well, there is a possibility that he didn't die. That might be a deliberate act on the show's part, so they can bring him back at some point if they wanted to. And the reason I think that is, well, this gets into how I ended up deciding not to go anywhere near this show in terms of a full analysis. The holes, or the portals, rifts, gateways, or any of the other names that they come up with in this show for those sparkly round cavities that they go through. I was going to say despite them knowing about them for so long, but even that comes into question. It's like, yeah. Let's put it this way. So Lee Shaw decides to bury the holes in his later years. You're like, okay, he's buried the holes. Why is he burying the holes? Oh, well, because he went down into them and his mates died? Okay. But isn't Keiko down there? And he knows there's some weird time-lapse stuff going on. So maybe she is down there and he could get her? It's like, yes, that is a possibility. So why is he blowing up the holes? Because he's helping Godzilla. What? Why is he... What? No, hang on. And it just gets more and more confusing from there. Just thinking about the mechanics of the holes on their own. It's like one point we see at the end we saw Godzilla walking through that portal thing. It's like, okay, so there's a place where he can walk through. But when we saw it earlier, that Lawton Dragon, I'm not calling him the Ion Dragon, the Lawton Dragon was going through like almost like the Ant-Man Quantum Zone time tunnel bullshit from Endgame. We saw that, and then the Lawton Dragon sort of punctured through the side of the wall. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, so this isn't the place they're supposed to be going. This is like a detour. But then, no, Godzilla walks through it, so there's somewhere where he can walk into... Then there's lots of other questions, like... I can't remember the doctor's name now. The one who was in the caravan, and then she detected something, and then she called up Monarch. Which is actually a recurring joke in the show, that every time someone calls up Monarch, even the head of Monarch, Verdugo, whatever her name was, she calls up Monarch, and they're continuously like, oh yeah, I'll hold. Yeah, I'll hold. Yeah, I want to do this. Okay, I'll hold. Why is that a thing? Why is that a recurring thing? Why is everybody holding when they're calling Monarch? Anyway, the doctor who's out in the middle of nowhere detects the plasma signal, I think it was. And then she says, oh, we detected this before in like the middle of Nevada and in Janjira, which is supposed to be a connection to the 2014 film. And you're okay, so this has got something to do with the Titans. Like they emit something, maybe. But then you find out that no, this has nothing to do with the Titans physically, even though that's what it's suggested. These are holes that exist and the Titans pass through them. You know, okay. But there wasn't a hole in Janjira or in Nevada. There's one in Kansas, I think they said in the film. Was it Kansas or Kentucky? Is that the same place? I have no idea about geography. But there is one in America, but it's not there. But then they filled that one in? Question again, did they? I don't know. In the series, they enter it, and there's the big swirly thing that normally says, yeah, it's got filled in, but they didn't do anything to fill it in. And then when they show it on the map earlier, it's not there. But the Nevada one is there, I think they mentioned. But then they're also saying that Monarch doesn't know anything about them, even though Monarch absolutely should have known something about them because they were dealing with them before. It's, You see what I mean about... You start looking into it and it makes less and less sense and you're trying to match all the dots up. Monarch Lom was trying to do this with Monarch's history, thanks to Skull Island, I should say. Because of that film introducing the 1946 reference to Monarch being funded, that throws the history off that was introduced in 2014. Monarch Lom trying to patch all that up. I can give the show a little bit of respect for it. But then they add all sorts of bullshit, like the wormhole portal rift things. Godzilla vs. Kong introduced it, but Jesus Christ, did they have to do what they did with them in this show? And did they have to do it so badly that none of it makes sense between the episodes. When the show first came out, we were just talking about how inconsistent the show was with the rest of the Monsterverse, how the history didn't really match up. But, oh, Jesus Christ, I just thought of something else. Right, put a pin in that. We were talking about its inconsistency with the Monsterverse, but then you start getting further and further into the show, and by the end of it, it's inconsistent with itself. To the point that a smaller Lawton dragon went through the wall of... God, what was the place called? Axis Mundi. It went through the wall portal bit of Axis Mundi, and it doing that caused so much suction it dragged Lee Shaw into it. Then in episode 10, he is left behind as the capsule is sucked into the portal. Okay, so now the suction has swapped around. The capsule thing was just left exactly where it was, but he was sucked in. But then when it happens again by a much bigger Lawton dragon, he's left behind and the capsule is sucked in. He has to run after the capsule. What? Which brings on the other question. Why did he let go? If he's being sucked in with it, which he wasn't because the show was inconsistent, but if he's being sucked in with it, he shouldn't have to hold on for so long because he's... Oh, God! The other thing I literally just thought of, and... So in Monarch Lom, when Godzilla first appears and gets blown up by the nuke, that whole thing is a big question mark because of... Okay, it went off in his face, so is he still standing there after the fact? But obviously not, because they all think he's dead. So did he get blown up and then run away very, very quickly? Like, ludicrously quickly? Why would he have done that? So many questions, but they deliberately cut off from that scene so we don't see what happens, to then reveal it later. And again, to the show's credit, they show Keiko Randa at that point, I think. Oh no, I think she was still Keiko Miura at that point. I can't remember. Keiko looking happy when Godzilla reappears, whilst Lee Shaw is all shocked and horrified. So props to the show for having that. But I've just thought, when Godzilla appears next to the nuke, he's much smaller. Like, very much smaller. Brings into question a lot of things, like, how long has he been growing for? Why is he only that big now? Did the bomb make him grow bigger? But then... there's cave paintings of him fighting Ghidorah. I'm pretty sure a 50-foot tall Godzilla would be a ludicrous opponent for a 100... No, he's even taller than that, isn't he? I was going to say 100 meter tall Ghidorah. Ghidorah was taller than that. A 50-foot tall Godzilla would have been a ludicrous opponent. No, is he 50 meter tall? The small Godzilla versus the big Ghidorah would have been a ludicrous fight. And yet when you see it on the cave paintings, they're about the same size. So, what's gone on there? Is this a different Godzilla? There are multiple Godzillas. I know there's a comic where there's a Dagon Godzilla, and that one's the one that they found the skeleton of in 2014. Although that's not actually confirmed, and the comics are a completely different continuity. But yeah, even that throws everything off. It throws off the history. Oh, Jesus Christ. The more you look into the show, the more inconsistencies you find, and as much as the show tried to do some attempts at sewing things together, it then made holes everywhere else. And as much as there is good stuff in Monarch Lom, there's so much bad that is confusing and doesn't make sense, and under no circumstances do I want to go anywhere near it for the sake of my own well-being. Which unfortunately, I do have to add, one of the things that stressed me out in my time of ultra stressedness was being unable to record shows on my computer. Because I used to be able to do that with the Windows game... what's it called? Game bar? Essentially, you press Windows Alt R and it records your screen for you. So a little hint for everybody there. But when I was doing that, it was recording a black screen when I was trying to record Monarch LOM. And I thought that was an Apple TV thing. I have since cancelled my Apple TV subscription because I couldn't find anything on there I wanted to watch, and then started an Amazon Prime subscription, and it was happening there again. Only to discover that there is something that has to be ticked off on the browser. I think it's called hardware acceleration. You have to untick that, because if you have it ticked, for some reason you can't record certain things. Untick it and it's fine. So I could have recorded all the Monarch shows before I lost my subscription to Apple TV, except when my browser updated, that for some reason got ticked on. And that's the only reason. It was very annoying to find that out, which just made my apathy for Monarch LOM even greater, because to then get all the footage I needed, I'd have to resubscribe to Apple TV, to a service that I can't really find anything I want to watch on, just to record those episodes. And to be honest, I can't be bothered. So consider this my review of the series as a whole, or as much as I'm willing to do. Overall, a headache in visual form. Now going from a video I don't want to make to start talking about videos I do want to make. There's a couple of videos I want to make based on a couple of streams that I have yet to properly watch. I watched EFAP's Godzilla -1 stream. I watched it sort of in the background, second screening it. I'm not actually that worried or bothered with doing a response to their Godzilla -1 comments. The most I'll say is they, for the most part, praised the film. Good. They praised stuff I didn't, i.e. some of the Godzilla animations I thought looked a bit stilted, but EFAP described it as a homage to the original suit actors, which I found very odd, because the suit acting really wasn't stilted. But they also criticised other things that I didn't, i.e. they criticised the fact that the film made a couple of references to the fact that the Japanese government wasn't going to do anything and America and Russia weren't going to do anything. And EFAP just said, oh well, why isn't the Japanese government doing something? They should be doing something. To which anybody who's sort of familiar with the Godzilla series and with the history of Japan around that time would probably know that Japan was demilitarized. They didn't get a military back until 1954, which is when the first Godzilla film came out. Straight after the Second World War, America had basically taken away all their stuff. And it's, well, you see it in the film. The ships and planes and whatnot that attack Godzilla are requisitioned. They are old warships and whatnot that are going to be dismantled. One of them, I think, is literally said is being turned around. Like it's heading to be scrapped and it's turning around to fight Godzilla. They don't explicitly say that in the film, but then you can just imagine that if they took the time to explain that, people would be saying, oh god, it's so much exposition, oh it's so boring. Which is actually quite a funny thing, because there's so much human drama in the Godzilla -1 film, which is something people complained about left, right and centre. But there's so much in there, and yet people are praising Godzilla -1, which leads into the fact that so many people now are saying, hey look, a Godzilla film with good human characters, ain't that good? See, it can be done. And I'm sitting there going, it has been done. Several times. Just you didn't watch it that time. I'm actually kind of interested to see, because, well, right, hold on a minute. Zimzilla did a stream, quite a long stream if I remember, like 5 hours, after the EFAP stream, and I started watching it, and he had a bunch of people on, they're all talking about this, that and whatnot, about the Godzilla and recent events, and I want to watch that stream all the way through. I haven't yet, I need to, because there was a couple of things in a little bit that I saw that I wanted to make comment on. So eventually I'm gonna have to make a video on that at some point, or at least just a short ramble video going over some of the points that are brought up. But in that bit that I saw, he mentioned that he wanted to talk about the EFAP stream. So I'm gonna have to go back and watch the EFAP stream, write down some of the points they made, then go watch the Zimzilla's stream and listen to what he has to say, and maybe go back and watch the EFAP stream as well, depending on what he says. This is what happens when you have to make effort into your work. You're sitting there listening to, I think it was like a 6-hour EFAP stream and then a 5-hour Zimzilla stream, and then potentially going back and forwards between the two. But Godzilla Minus One is one subject which I think I'm going to wait until I can get hold of a digital copy of it and then analyse it properly. The discussion around it regards good human characters in a Godzilla film. Well worth discussing that. But it's the other things that EFAP did, which during several times, at least half a dozen times, they reference, oh well, the Godzilla Minus One did it right, the Monsterverse didn't, lol. And every time I was like, Jesus Christ, they were doing the same thing they've done many, many times before. They would just say the Monsterverse is bad, and that's it. It's one of my... It's one of those things that really upsets me, because EFAP is normally very good at criticising stuff. They'll have all sorts of videos, streams and whatnot, talking about the things they don't like. So when they reference something like they've been doing with Godzilla King of the Monsters, you can go, oh yeah, they talked about that, that's why that's bad. But the only thing they've got on Godzilla King of the Monsters is their EFAP movies on it. And that video is terrible as a critique of the film, which is kind of inspired me to make 3 videos. Well, 3 videos I've got planned anyway. I won't say what they are now, I want them to be a nice little surprise. But yeah, EFAP's Godzilla Minus One analysis and their terrible comments on Godzilla King of the Monsters has made me want to make a couple of videos. But they aren't the only ones. Anyone in the Godzilla community will be aware of at least one video that's come out recently that is, I think even OmniViewer made a short little video taking the piss out of it, which I thought was brilliant. I haven't watched it yet. Again, I just clamped down on anything that was going to stress me out, and people making terrible videos about Godzilla were one of the things that I clamped down on. So I need to watch that video. There's also another video by somebody I've watched before and thought they did some good work, but apparently they made a Godzilla video and it wasn't very good, so I need to have a look at them. There's also a video that Neo Monster Island shared before I unfollowed him. He shared a video that had a terrible Godzilla argument in it, so I want to put some eyes on that. And yeah, there's still there's like a 10 video series going over Godzilla King of the Monsters, which I want to look at. So yeah, we've got plenty of work to be doing, and some of it may end up in videos like this, where I just say, I've looked at this thing, I'm going to talk about it, rather than a full edited video. But yeah, this is me saying, sorry I was off for a bit. I'm not fully back yet, but I will be soon, and hopefully with some higher quality content than I had before. Until that time, I hope you can go without me, or I hope this tide you over until then. Last but not least, as always, thank you for watching.